Hello, my friends, and welcome to 7 True Stories, strange enough to be on the X-Files. Most of our life stories are concrete, factual, and of course logical. But for some people, their life stories are out of this world. Here's 7 true, spine-tingling stories by real people via Thought Catalog. My grandfather had been in World War II and told us about when himself and a few other soldiers had been separated from his unit and were trying to get back to Normandy. They had gone through a clearing in a wooded area, but had to drop off when they heard something approaching. They were on their bellies in 3 feet of grass when they saw 20 or 30 German soldiers running across the clearing, clearly in a state of panic. Then they just froze in mid-step. He said they resembled statues and that some weren't even touching the ground, and that there was no noise whatsoever. Even the birds had gone silent. After a few seconds came a loud noise like a metal scraping on concrete, and the frozen soldiers started to become blurry to the point at which they vanished without a trace. This had been reported by all the soldiers that were present, and all were called into the War Office London after the return to the UK, where they were pressed on what they saw over the period of a few days, and were taken back to the same spot in France shortly after the war ended. Surprisingly, when they got there were other men sharing some accommodation who reported similar occurrences in the exact area. They were taken to the woods and had to describe where and how the events took place. My granddad had said that the entire area was guarded heavily, and that part of the ground was heavily excavated. The strangest thing of all, he said, was that there were hundreds of dogs in the area, just milling around for no apparent reason. They returned to the UK with a gag order, ordering them never to speak about any of this. He went back to the same spot in France before he died in 1985. He said that the area had been covered with unmarked warehouses and was guarded by an unusually professional security company. He reckoned they were military. I've tried to find out more about this, but I can't find any records of it. But I do remember one of the guys who he was with to this day. He used to come and visit sometimes and referred to the place as the Splintered Woods. My cousin and I both remember a room that apparently doesn't exist. When we were both around 10, my cousin was having family problems. My mom invited her to stay with us while it got sorted out. It's pretty fun, kind of like having a temporary sister. We ended up talking about it a few years ago, reminiscing about the weird things we would do together and some of the memories that stood out the most. Among them, the night we stayed up laughing at my golden retriever who kept trying to steal my pillow off the bottom bunk we were trying to sleep in. Only problem was, we didn't have a dog, and I never had a bunk bed. For whatever reason, I'd never considered how little sense the memory made. Thinking maybe she's just going along with the story, I asked her what color the bed frame was. She thought about it for a second and answered red. She was right. According to my mom, we never stayed over at anyone else's house. And even if we had, I still remember what her friends' houses looked like. None of them had red bunk beds. I still have no idea what happened. When I was 19 and my best friend was 20, we're nearly 40 now, we were driving back to my house after visiting someone at work. We were on a somewhat busy road. It was getting dark, but wasn't quite dark yet. There were street lights and business lights everywhere, so visibility was still great. This road was 3 lanes in each direction, and there was a concrete median dividing the traffic. I was in the left lane next to the median, and the traffic light was coming up. I saw a man standing in the median a good way before where the crosswalk and the light would be, It instantly made me nervous. As soon as I thought that, he stepped out to cross the street. My best friend and I instantly braced for impact as I slammed on my brakes. We went through him. We didn't hit him, because there was a car to my right. I wasn't able to swerve out of lane to avoid hitting the man. I looked in my rear view and there wasn't anyone there. I had come to a complete stop and we physically turned around in our seats to see if he had jumped out of the way. There was no one there and no way he could have ran off or hidden anywhere that fast. We both turned towards each other and, almost in sync, asked, "Did you see that man?" We both saw the same thing. A man. Couldn't quite describe his face, but it was a man's form, and both of us remember being confused as to why he was wearing a white robe, and both being terrified that he stepped out in front of us, like he was committing suicide. I had a baby in the back seat. She was about 3 months old. She had been crying during the drive and went silent when we came screeching to a stop, which added to the weirdness of it all. We still bring it up occasionally, and neither of us can come up with an explanation for what we saw, other than something supernatural. Also, we both saw a white cloth fling across the windshield, like he was hitting it, but there was no impact. Nothing. It was like he went through the car. I have a friend who once told me about a time he was in his teens. He slept in a bunk bed with his brother in the lower bunk. He said he dreamt a demon wearing the skin of a man threatened to kill his brother. In order to save him, he somehow managed to procure a knife and put the knife to the neck of the demon. The demon tells him, the only way to rid evil is through evil. He hesitated and woke up to find he was pressing a butcher knife under the neck of his younger brother. He was still sleeping, fortunately, but when he awoke, he told the same dream exactly, except he was attacked by his brother in the dream and said the exact same thing. The only way to rid evil is through evil. Nothing similar happened after that, and it gave him some serious issues that led him to go through psychotherapy for a while. I stole a picture from one of the historic houses in Old Town San Diego on Halloween for fun with my girlfriend. A picture was painted in the 1800s. It was Jesus praying in the hallway. Upon closer examination, there was an alternate black devil-looking Jesus hidden in the shadows of the painting. I took it home and put it in the closet. Randomly on nights, I would smell the worst smell in the world and wake up and see what looked like a black smoke cloud. I moved 3 times and still saw the same shut. Finally, my roommate saw the same thing, so she knew I wasn't crazy. Long story short, I brought the picture back to where I got it and told one of the employees what I did and apologized. She replied, "Don't worry, they always come back to us." I'm not quite sure what to classify this as. People I've spoken with this about this experience have theories of what it could be, anything from a lucid dream to the bizarre and supernatural. My in-laws annually rent a cottage in the summer for the whole family to come together. My wife is from a family of 3 boys and a girl, and most everyone is married with kids. Needless to say, the cottages are typically quite large, and even then things get cozy. That said, it was just another night in a new place. The bedroom we had faced the front of the house and was right above the porch. It's one of those structures where the sleep slant of the roof affected the upper rooms, and we were right under the steeple. It was well after midnight and everyone was settling down for bed. I think my wife had dozed off an hour or so prior, as she usually does, and I was left to my own devices. I was feeling tired after reading and decided to tuck in for the night. Lights out, book down, good night. Here's where things get a bit odd. A handful of hours later, likely at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., I woke up with a start. Not entirely unnatural, as I fall into either a featherlight sleep or sleep that could survive a tornado. Across the room, tucked in just under the lower part slant of the room, is a large man. Now, my youngest brother stands at 6'4", and is a heavy-set dude. At a glance, this is who I thought was standing in the room. I sit up in bed and looked at him, confused, and say, "Andy, what are you doing here?" The longer I look at this person, the more I realize it couldn't possibly be my brother-in-law. Forget the creep factor of if it was him. This would be a completely different story. The angle of the roof appeared to intersect with the upper torso of the figure, yet I somehow felt as if I could perceive the entire figure. It was like looking at a really trippy optical illusion. I could see a full person, but my brain in some way identified that it was impossible to visualize someone as large as I thought I was seeing, when the only clearance of that portion of the room offered was 4 feet max. His clothing was also off. His face was heavily bearded, and his face looked like it was decaying. The second I became aware of this, I felt a wave of incredible terror wash over me. I swear to whatever god you do or do not believe in that this thing turned towards me in what seemed like slow motion, and then faster than I could perceive it, it was right next to the bed. I remember nothing more of the night after that. My mother-in-law, a true-blooded Hungarian, whom I offered just as a gypsy, was sitting across from me having breakfast the next morning. She looks at me and quietly asks, "What can you tell me about your visitor last night?" I had no words. I eventually told her what little I remembered, and she smiled and nodded. We never spoke of it again. 6 years ago, I was hanging out with my siblings in our yard during a clear sunny day around high noon. I suddenly caught something moving in the sky out of the corner of my eye. When I turned to get a better look, I couldn't reconcile what I was seeing. It looked just like a metal cube. It was just gliding through the air up pretty high. I proceeded to absolutely lose my nerve, and my siblings saw it as well, before it disappeared behind some trees. We ran to the other side of the trees, but it was already gone. It still creeps me out to think about it. We did live right next to a military base, so make that of it what you will. The thing had all the aerodynamics of a literal brick, though. If you want more scary top 7 lists like this, you can support me on Patreon, patreon.com/AmoriStar. With enough support, it would be my goal and dream to deliver you creepy content on this channel daily. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or evening. I'm Amori. Now, listen to the spooky tunes.